My next guest is here to bring us an update on a story that this show has followed closely, the tragic saga of Bryan Malinowski, the 53-year-old director of the Bill and Hillary Clinton National Airport in Little Rock, Arkansas. Bryan was a law-abiding gun owner. He became the target of Joe Biden's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, even though he was unaware that he was even being investigated. The ATF staged a pre-dawn raid on his home to execute a search warrant. Agents broke down his door, and Malinowski, thinking he was being robbed, grabbed a pistol. That led to a shootout in his home and Bryan's untimely death by a fatal gunshot wound to the head, while his wife was only 2 steps behind him. The lawyer representing his family is here to tell us more. He's not only an attorney to the Malinowski family, but he's been a U.S. attorney and, full disclosure, my chief legal counselor for a good period of time when I served as governor of Arkansas. Please welcome Mr. Bud Cummins. But as you know, a few weeks ago, I spoke about this issue because it just disturbed me greatly. And I really appreciate your coming on to give us some update on what has been just an unspeakable tragedy. A very prominent and well-liked citizen of Little Rock, highest paid employee in the city of Little Rock, correct. Been in his position, 13, 15 years, something like that? Really had a remarkable record. And one day he's sound asleep with his wife. His door is broken down. He thinks it's a home invasion. And the result is he's dead. His wife is a widow. And nobody's given any answers. So let's pick this up. First of all, the morning of March 19th, you were able to secure for us originally, and others have seen it now, but the video from a neighbor's camera, we're going to take a look at it if we can, and this is 10 different police cars. We're not sure how many people were here, but there were 10 cars, so there were at least 10. Correct. Probably more. It's unlikely that there was only one officer to a car, but these were the agents of the ATF, and this is from a neighbor's security camera. You see them coming. As you can tell, it's well before daylight.
About 6:01 a.m. They were allowed to come at 6, and they came at 6:01.
Because in order to make that kind of raid, it has to be at a certain time.
The warrant has it's a form, and the judge checked 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., so they came at 6:01.
Okay, and then when the agents came, the Ring doorbell camera at Mr. Malinowski's home, we have that footage, and we'll just kind of recap what happened. So this is the officers, and they come and they put tape over the Ring camera so he nor anyone else can see who it is or what it is, and then the power was cut off to their home, we think.
90% sure.
Okay. So suddenly it's dark in his house, his door's crashed in. Tell us what happened.
Well, let me back up and first thank you for the leadership you showed in your monologue several weeks ago. That has really helped bring a lot of attention to this case, and this case deserves attention.
Yeah.
What happened is somewhere in between what you see on that tape, when the SWAT team comes up and has tape pre-prepared to cover up the lens of his Ring camera, we know that 57 seconds later, he was dead. We don't know how long it was after they taped over the camera, before they knocked, and we don't know how long it took after they knocked for them to kick his door in, and we don't know how long it took after they kicked his door in for him to hear it, wake up, find a gun, get it loaded, leave his bedroom, and go see intruders in his front hallway. So they were not at that door. I'd have to guess. I wish we had video evidence if they hadn't covered up the Ring camera, or if they had worn body-worn cameras, we would know exactly what they did.
Now, when we were here before, and I want to go into this because you mentioned the body cameras, I remember speaking about it and saying they should have those. The law requires them to have those body cameras. We thought maybe they did and they just weren't releasing it. It wasn't but just a few days ago that we discovered they weren't wearing body cameras.
That's correct. Little Rock Police Department was on the scene with ATF. They are required to wear body cameras. President Biden and the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General announced policies that require ATF to wear body-worn cameras when they execute search warrants, just like this one. They announced that policy 2 years ago. Nobody had on a body-worn camera, not ATF, not Little Rock Police Department.
And you represent the family. How long did it take you, as the attorney for the family, to even get the simple acknowledgement that they did or did not have the cameras?
Maybe a month?
A month.
Yeah.
What really precipitated that they finally acknowledged it?
Well, what you going on TV and calling for them to release the body cameras in the name of transparency, which is why the president said that all law enforcement officers should wear them when they serve search warrants. After you did your monologue, Attorney General Tim Griffin from Arkansas picked up on that, and he started calling for it. United States Senator Tom Cotton called for them, and then maybe 30 or 40 members of the General Assembly in Arkansas had a press conference and collectively called on ATF to release the body cameras to answer some of these questions. I think finally the heat was, you all turned the heat, you and all those other people I mentioned turned the heat up, and they finally had to call and tell, they called me and they called Senator Cotton and said, we don't have any.
I want you to help us understand, the family must just be an extraordinary sense of disbelief as to what's happened to.
Absolutely, and I'd like to talk a little bit, I think he deserves it. We need to talk about who was Bryan Malinowski.
Yeah.
Not only was he a very successful, he loved his career at the airport, and anybody that knows him would tell you he was so devoted to his career. It was one of 9 airports in the country that's debt-free, and we've done over $200 million of improvements since he became the director. But he also had all these hobbies. He's been collecting coins since he was a kid. I've seen books this thick about coins that he liked to read. He read books about how to play poker and tried to learn to play competitive poker. And then about 4 years ago, he started becoming a gun collector. And he started going to gun shows. And I've gone out to the gun shows. I've talked to people that knew him. And he was a guy, if you've ever been to a gun show and you like guns, it's really a group of people that love guns, and they sit out there and gab all day about guns. And that's what he liked to do. So at some point, the ATF decided that he was no longer a private collector, that his primary motive was now profit, even though he made $260,000 a year at his day job, and that he should have bought a license. They never told him that. They never wrote him a letter. They started investigating him. They surveilled him, followed him around town at night. They put a tracker on his car and then got this search warrant and executed it at 6 in the morning with Fallujah-style military tactics and killed him.
Now, you've been a U.S. attorney.
If it's okay what they did to Bryan Malinowski, then we all have to go to bed scared every single night.
And that's the point of this story that I want people to understand. This is not just about him. This is about anybody that is somehow coming under suspicion of federal agents. You were a U.S. attorney, and I think it's very providential that you're representing the family because you understand how the federal government prosecutes things. In conversations we've had, I want you to explain to our audience, this is not a really clearly defined law as to when you've crossed the line.
No, the definition of who needs to buy one of these licenses is subjective. You can't look in a book and say, well, if I've sold 5 guns in a month, then I now have to go. It's subjective. And the booklet's about this thick that tries to tell you what the rule is. And so I don't personally know how it's constitutional to try to hold someone accountable criminally for a crime that's defined subjectively. Because we could all read that rule and come up with a different explanation of what it said.
Now, he was never charged with anything.
No, he was just suspected of having violated this rule. And it's called the gun show loophole, and it's a very political issue. The gun control people want to close the gun show loophole, but it's not been closed. Congress has had the opportunity to close it probably 15 times in the last 20 years, and they have decided to not close it. Now, I left out somebody that responded to your monologue. Congressman Jim Jordan, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, sent ATF a letter, asked them by last Monday to provide all the documents that supported this search and this investigation. They produced 0 documents, but they are going to bring the director of ATF in front of the House Judiciary Committee on May 23rd to answer questions about this. It's a tragedy what happened to Bryan Malinowski, but these issues are so much larger. Because like I said, if it's okay what they did to Bryan, there is no Fourth Amendment, and we really can't sleep well at night anymore. Because it could happen to you, it could happen to me.
It's why it's so important we continue to focus on this story. Bud, thank you for being here. It's a very important case. It's still developing, and it's one that we are going to keep an eye on, and we'll keep you updated. I want to say again, I absolutely support our policemen and women. But when those in law enforcement escalate a situation for no apparent reason and then fail to follow the law themselves, it's critical that we demand accountability for our sake, but also for the sake of the 99% of the police officers in this country who are absolutely responsible and professional. So keep up with this disturbing story. If you go to Huckabee.tv and click on Bud's name, we're going to connect you with a whole host of links and documents and information that we certainly couldn't get into tonight.
If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I hope you will now. The button is just below this video, and there's a little bell next to it. If you click on those, YouTube will reluctantly start letting you know when we've got a new video uploaded.